So welcome again, everyone, to our virtual Black Infant and Maternal Health Series. My name is Monica Nelson, and I'm the Program Associate for the Black Child Legacy Campaign at the Center at CR Health Foundation. We want to thank everyone so much for joining us this evening, and we have a very exciting program that we hope you enjoy for tonight. For those of you that are just joining us, we do ask that if you have any questions, you type those into the Q&A feature. Throughout the program, you will have several opportunities to ask our panelists and guest presenters any questions that you may have. If you're unable to answer your question, do know that there will be another opportunity for us to continue with those for the next sections of tonight's program. This event will be recorded and posted on the Sierra Health Foundation's website, as well as UC Davis Health. And I would now like to just go into our agenda to give you an idea of today's program. So we are going to start by centering our objective and telling you more about the goals of today's opportunity and move into a grounding libation. The first portion of today's webinar will be a discussion on the topic of the fourth trimester to introduce the topic for today. We will follow this section by a question and answer panel. Following this section, we will jump into an intermission activity, and I hope you all stick around. It'll be a really exciting movement opportunity for our group here today. The final section of today's program will be a community partner Q&A panel. And then we will close our event by sharing resources to help you continue to learn about the work and opportunities in the community. So without further ado, I would like to pass this over to our Senior Program Officer, Shelley Dyer.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. It's great to have you here in this space. We're so excited to be here. And this event is a collaboration between the Black Child Legacy Campaign, Sierra Health Foundation and the Center, and UC Davis. I'd just like to center us on our objective and just bring the focus into exactly why we're here. This event is a response to the Black maternal health crisis. It's a community response to address that Black pregnant women and birthing people who are recognized as some of the most vulnerable demographics of pregnant people to help ensure that they have more support throughout the pregnancy process. Our objective here is to curate a space for pregnant people. We're intentionally focused on bringing awareness to the work of doulas as integral leaders in maternal care, connecting Black mothers to healthcare systems, and highlighting community resources to support successful birthing outcomes. By bridging the work of UC Davis maternal health professionals, as well as community champions and experts as identified by Sierra Health Foundation. So we'll do this in a few ways today by both engaging in dialogue in infant and perinatal health, as well as sharing information and resources from trusted sources and local community organizations that provide services to children, pregnant people, new parents, and families. I'd like to transition us to someone who's really special to the Black Child Legacy Campaign, Mrs. Tina Roberts. I'll take some time to introduce her before she shares a grounding libation as we open up this really special sacred space. Tina Roberts is a respected community leader who has a proven track record of success administering community-based organizations. With more than 30 years of experience as an administrator and program developer, she is also a graduate of California University in Pennsylvania with a degree in special education and psychology. Her professional life has been committed to improving the living situations of children and families, and she comes in contact with many people who she really is passionate about serving. She's received several recognitions, including most recently, the 2022 Sacramento Women Achieving Greatness. Ms. Roberts also served as a clinic administrator for the Birthing Project Clinic as Chief Operating Officer, and she's also the co-founder of Roberts Family Development Center. She's a past board member of Valley Vision, which brings regional leaders together to tackle challenges affecting our region, and was appointed by the Sacramento County Board of Supervisors to serve as a member of the steering committee on the Reducing African American Child Deaths campaign in Sacramento. She's also a senior fellow member of the American Leadership Forum. Without further ado, I will ask Ms. Roberts to join us here and open up this space with a grounding libation.
Thank you so much, Monica. And all that really means is that I have a passion and a care for pregnant people and for babies. I am so honored to be here. With that being said, I'd like to acknowledge our ancestors, and I won't read all of it out of respect for time. So if you're like me, you need a moment just to breathe, just to focus. This is all about you. We acknowledge and thank the people of African ancestors who were stolen from their homelands and brought to this country, and whose free labor played a major role in the formation and economic wealth of this country. We affirm and uplift those of African ancestry living in this country today as living testaments to the strength, love, faith, and fortitude of a resilient people. I believe that you can always find joy in a crisis, and birth is a joy. We used to honor our birth people, and I want us to do that no matter what. We practice something called dreaming, and with dreaming, we would ask our pregnant moms to think about what they see for the future for their babies. And we would ask them to go to the dollar store and buy stones. I don't know if you all can see stones, but they come in different colors. And with each stone, we would ask the mom to think about your baby. What do you wish for your baby when your baby's 5, entering school for the first time? And every 5 years, what do you dream for your baby? What do you want your baby to be wearing? What kind of music do you think they'll be listening to? And we would ask the mom to put those stones in a beautiful container, whatever container they wanted to put in, and to display that container. Now, the dreams may change as the child get older, and the child may decide to put their own stones in, have their own dreams. But what it does is it gives you a visual, something that you can look at and hold, something that you are pouring into your child, that you can present to your child. I have the opportunity of doing this with a pregnant mom. And this was 25 years ago that we did this ceremony. And I can say with joy in my heart that young lady is still in my life. And we were able to obtain not all of those dreams, but some of those dreams. But what the stones do, they hold the energy for you. And I was able to present those stones to her when she graduated from Wiley College. Talk about the joy in my heart, talk about the joy of birth that we have in our community. There are so many different ways that we can and should continue to honor the process of birthing. So thank you all for allowing me to be a part of this. It is such a passion that I've had for most of my professional life. And with that being said, I'll turn it over to Charlene. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Roberts, for getting us started and grounding us in purpose and honoring our history, lineage, and ancestry. Let me get to this slide. And so it's my honor to introduce our two speakers here today, Dr. Mika Godzich and Dr. Eric Fernandez y Garcia, are two wonderful physicians here at UC Davis Health, and two people that I actually would consider trust to care for not just myself, but my loved ones as well. So they'll be the ones talking about our 4th trimester, the first 3 months after delivery. Dr. Mika Godzich is a board certified family medicine physician. She's passionate about providing full spectrum care to diverse patients who are traditionally and medically underserved. through engagement in educational settings about increasing the number of new family doctors providing this care. She is an associate professor in the Department of Family and Community Medicine at UC Davis, University of California, Davis. She provides clinical care, including prenatal care at One Community Health, a federally qualified health center in Sacramento, and staffs labor and delivery at UC Davis Health. As a family medicine physician who provides family planning, prenatal, intrapartum, and postpartum care, in addition to pediatric care, she has the unique opportunity to provide longitudinal care for patients at many phases of their lives. And we also have Dr. Eric Fernandez y Garcia, to join us. He is born and raised in South Sacramento in Meadowview. He received his MD and his Master's in Public Health at UCLA, and completed pediatric residency and fellowship with a focus on multicultural health at Children's Hospital Oakland. In 2005, he came back to Sacramento to practice general pediatrics and research intergenerational mental health and child health inequities. He's a fellow of the American Academy of Pediatrics and commissioner for Sacramento County First Five. He's also the director for equity, diversity, and inclusion in the Office of Graduate Medical Education and Office of Student and Resident Diversity, where he helps over 800 new physicians understand equity, diversity, and inclusion as we prepare our new doctors and healthcare providers. He's an academic coach in School of Medicine, specifically coaching students who are focused on serving underserved communities. Co-chair of Department of Pediatrics and Committee of Departmental Diversity and Pediatric Health Equity, and clinician champion for our Population Health Department work group on healthcare disparities. So two very passionate people who provide care in this space. So thank you all both for being here, and I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Godzich.
Thank you so much, Charlene, and thank you all for including me here today. I'm very grateful to be part of this conversation and to have the opportunity to share the knowledge that I've gained over the last 15 years of practicing medicine. This is a really near and dear to my heart topic. As someone whose grandmother passed away in childbirth, born of a Black mother, lineage of Black women, this is very near and dear to my heart. And I really relish the opportunity to share with all of you the expertise that I have as a physician and empower you as birthing people to carry that with you and ensure the safety of you and your loved ones. So thank you. Next slide. So Charlene took a moment to poll the public about what we could talk about and what knowledge we could share with all of you. And we had the opportunity to learn from you that there is a strong interest in understanding what happens in the fourth trimester. And so what is this fourth trimester? This is the first 3 months after delivery. It doesn't matter what kind of delivery you have. It doesn't matter if you had a premature delivery. It doesn't matter what context the delivery happened in. It's the first 3 months after delivery. And we named it fourth trimester for a very specific moment. And that is to emphasize that care does not stop after delivery. There is still a lot of opportunities to ensure that you are healthy. And so we talked about the fact that there is an increase, there is a disparate amount of mortality and morbidity with people who are Black in our country. And some of that happens in this fourth trimester. And so tonight's opportunity is to share with all of you things to be thoughtful about and opportunities to ensure that you're as healthy as possible. Next. So this transition is really the becoming of a parent for both the birthing parent and their partner, but also their newborn. And Eric is here today, and I am so grateful for him as a partner in caring for the dyad of the birthing partner and the newborn in those first 3 months. Next. So the recommendations that I want to share to you are what the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology and the American Academy of Pediatricians have come up with for tools to ensure that you and your presuming you're a birthing parent, you and your newborn are as safe as possible. And I want to share with you what you should be sure that you get. Next slide. So here's the recommended follow-up after delivery. What we know is that up to 40% of people who give birth don't see a healthcare provider again at all. They just don't have a postpartum visit. What I want to share with you is that you should, and please advocate for yourself, to have an initial healthcare appointment with a provider within 3 weeks of delivery to ensure that you're safe. And that visit should include the following things, and that is finding out how you're recovering from birth, and you need a blood pressure check to make sure that you're safe. What your mood is like, to make sure that we can screen and ensure that you are as healthy as possible emotionally. Finding out how your sleep is and how you can be supported, and ensuring you receive adequate sleep and rest to be able to care for yourself and your newborn. Making sure that you're able to feed your baby in the ways that make sense for you and your family, and getting support in whatever way that you want to feed your newborn with. And that can be a lactation consultant, it can be getting a breast pump, it can be hooking you into resources like WIC and La Leche League and all of the things that can ensure that your newborn is thriving and you are too. Sexuality, contraception, and thinking about timing of next deliveries. This is entirely the birthing person's choice, and you should have the tools to make informed decisions about what you want and have adequate information as soon as possible, because we can start ovulating within 21 days after delivery. And that is something that people should have the power to manage in whatever way makes sense to them, with all of the information to decide what their birth spacing is and what choices they want around that. Chronic disease management. Many, many people are living with more than one condition when they deliver and when they are pregnant. And those conditions are all altered by their pregnancy. And so having the support to ensure that there's ongoing care of their chronic conditions after they deliver, as their body is going through significant changes after delivering a large infant, losing a large amount of weight, making meals for a new person, growing a person, all of those things is very important. And we want our patients, when we're working with patients, to be supported in getting adequate care. And then finally, within 12 weeks of delivery, a comprehensive healthcare appointment should review all of the above in detail. And that is screening for postpartum depression, ensuring that the recovery from childbirth is going well, that you're out of the window for preeclampsia, that you are able to get the rest that you need, and that your child is feeding well, and that your long-term care in terms of your sexuality and your chronic disease management have a direct plan. Next slide. I'm not sure if the participants are able to enter anything in the chat, but I know you all have opinions and experiences and thoughts about what you should expect changes in within the first 3 months of delivery. And if you're able to enter that in the chat, please share what things might change during that 4th trimester. And what I want to do here is just to say, what is normal? What is to be expected as changes? One of the things that comes up a lot for first-time parents after they've delivered is it normal that I'm losing so much hair? Yes, it is normal. With the hormonal changes, we have had a significant thickening in our hair during pregnancy, and then when we deliver and we have a decrease in the progesterone that's around, we lose our hair, and that is absolutely normal. So that is not something that, definitely ask your healthcare provider about, but not something that's a red flag. And I will get to the red flags. So I'm not sure if you're able to put anything in the chat, so we might as well list them out. Go ahead. Yeah, expect changes in sleep. A lot of people have significant changes in their patterns. People who are night owls suddenly cannot stay up past X hour of the night. We have changes in our eating habits and our sexual desire, in our mood. Baby blues is a thing. We have changes in how frequently we go to the bathroom, how our bowel movements happen, what we are interested in terms of food as we're making the nourishment for a new creature. Our interest in our sexual partners or new sexual partners can change significantly, and your energy level can definitely change as well. And all of these are opportunities to check in with a healthcare provider about, is it normal that I now have fat in a place that I didn't used to? We can talk about those things and see what is concerning and what is less concerning, and what a person who has just delivered really wants to be sure is safe and normal. Next slide. Here are the red flag symptoms, and I really encourage anyone who is in that window of delivery to be aware of the risk of these things happening that could be very dangerous for your health. A headache that will not go away with Tylenol places you at risk of preeclampsia. That could be a warning sign that something is significantly wrong. And I want you to reach out to a healthcare provider about that. And that can be your doula. It can be someone, even if you're in your pediatrician's office and you're encountering a provider there, talk to them about these things so that your blood pressure can be measured and people can be sure that you are safe. Next. A seizure, of course. If you have a seizure, please get checked out. Don't brush off anything. One of our wonderful panelists here today said, please remind folks, and Ms. Travers might choose to talk about this, but please remind folks that even if your baby is very ill and in the NICU, you still need to take care of yourself and pay attention to things. So if something significant happens like a seizure, even if your baby is not well and premature and you are thinking mostly about them, please get checked out. Next. A leg that is more swollen than the other places you at risk of a blood clot. And when you are pregnant and in the period of time after you deliver, you have a higher chance of developing blood clots. And blood clots are not just about what happens in your legs, but they can travel to your lungs. Next. And so that shortness of breath or chest pain that is not getting better could be one of those blood clots that has traveled into your legs. Next. Pelvic pain, it is normal to have aching and cramping, but pain that is getting worse than what it was when you were in labor is not normal. That is something that needs to be checked out. And that could be a sign that you have an active infection or that a part of the placenta was not removed, and that needs to be evaluated. Breast pain. Mastitis is a condition where you have engorgement of the breast, and that can lead to significant inflammation and infection. And that can actually land you in the hospital for hospitalization if you are not treated immediately. So don't pause on your own health if you are having significant breast pain. Get it looked at as soon as possible. Next. If your C-section incision is draining or if it's open, have it looked at immediately. Again, potential for infection, and that can be managed. And we want to help you with that as soon as possible. And don't let anyone tell you, oh, that's to be expected. It's not. Next. Thoughts of hurting yourself or your newborn. I mentioned baby blues. Baby blues is something that can happen where your emotions are very intense in this moment of anxiety of caring for a new person and being the sole person responsible for them. Being sleep deprived can also lead to anxiety and distress. And there are thoughts that can be really significantly dangerous. And as someone who has had to have loved ones hospitalized for postpartum psychosis, where someone really truly had delusions after the birth of their newborn, this is a very serious condition and should be evaluated sooner rather than later so that medications that are appropriate can be given and all of the support for everyone involved can be provided. Next. So your newborn, we talked about the birthing person. So your newborn is this precious bundle of joy. And if it's the first time you've delivered, some of these things are worthwhile reiterating. After you leave the hospital, your baby should be seen within the first 72 hours of life. Even if you're an experienced parent. And the reason why is that it is absolutely normal for babies to lose some weight after delivery. But, and actually Eric corrected me, sorry, it's 24 to 48. Thank you, Eric. It is not 72, it's within 1 to 2 days after delivery, thank you. Babies do lose some weight right after delivery, and you can imagine losing the amniotic fluid and all of those things. But if they lose more than a certain percent of their body weight, and that's typically in the 8 to 10% range, we are very concerned and we want to support those babies in getting what they need to be able to thrive, because babies who lose too much weight are at risk of not being able to develop normally. And that's really the goal, is really to support babies in becoming thriving infants who are chubby and have all the dimples and all of those things. And we know that weight represents neurologic or brain function. They should get back to their birth weight within 2 weeks. So if your baby is losing weight, expect that your healthcare provider will want to see you back every couple of days to make sure that weight is back. And they will, and they should keep seeing you until your baby is back at birth weight. And I'm saying that out loud because I don't want you to ever feel like, oh gosh, I wasn't sure that I should have my baby seen again. It's really important that your baby continues to be seen. And then your newborn visits happen at 1 month, 2 months. And that's where you have preventive care and ensure that you're bonding appropriately with your baby and that everyone is thriving. Next slide. And so that preventive care, and that's the things that we offer to babies when they're born. We offer all babies vitamin K because not all babies make it. And this is a really important agent to make sure that babies don't have a bleeding condition where they do not have enough of any clotting factors. Antibiotic eye ointment is administered to prevent any sort of infection that a baby might develop when going through the vaginal canal. And then the hepatitis B vaccine is offered at birth. There are screenings done at birth, and those include blood draws to make sure that your baby is not living with a congenital or a genetic condition that could be managed very early and so that your newborn can thrive. All babies have hearing screens, and they are all checked for jaundice. And jaundice is a condition that happens when there's an accumulation of bilirubin, when babies aren't eliminating quite as fast as they otherwise would. The baby's hearts are screened to make sure they have good blood flow and good oxygen levels in their blood, and that's to identify any risk of a heart condition that might be identified early and make sure that your baby is as healthy as possible. And sometimes we check blood sugar if the birthing parent has had diabetes, especially if your baby is particularly small or particularly large. And then at 2 months of age, here's the list of the vaccines. And in the interest of time, I won't get too much into the details, but these are the ones that we routinely offer to all children. And that is because we know that at 2 months of age, babies can develop antibodies and their immune systems can really use these vaccines to fight off the development of any of these conditions. And this is a lovely opportunity to really ensure that your baby is as healthy as possible. So with that, I am going to leave it open for questions. And yeah, thank you.
Dr. Godsich, thank you so much for your remarkable presentation and for the obvious passion that you show for this space and this area. We did receive a question that I was hoping that you and Dr. Fernandez y Garcia might be able to answer in concert. This evening's program is specifically targeting Black infant maternal health. Why is this population specifically vulnerable? Is this a physical vulnerability or a societal vulnerability?
Thank you so much for that question. And I think the answer is racism. The answer is American history. The answer is, a medical system that was built in American history. so that between the structural racism of the way that Black people live in this country, between the way that people have been treated by the medical system and compounding factors of generations of minoritization of Black people and the legacy of slavery and of enslavement and of disparate treatment that really is unfortunately very, very recent and still happening. The outcomes that are poor for Black birthing people are not anchored in biology. I want to make that very clear. I'm going to say it again. They are not anchored in biology.
Thank
Eric,
you,
I'll
Dr.
let you add. I don't know, Eric, if you want to add anything.
Yeah, I can speak a little bit about Black infant health, and there are lots of factors that contribute to the disparities that we see in Black infant health. I'll take an opportunity to make a plug for something that, as a commissioner for First Five, one of the programs that benefits from First Five support is the Black Mothers United program with Her Health First and Black Child Legacy campaign. And these are multi-dimensional programs to support women or birthing folks during the perinatal period and postpartum. And with programs like this, we've seen a pretty dramatic improvement in Black infant health and improvement in those mortalities. So, I use that as a plug for that program, those programs, but also to show that it really takes addressing all of the systemic and societal factors that produce these negative outcomes for the population. So I would answer what causes it by saying, what are we trying to do to improve it? And it's a very expansive program that helps women through that whole period, or birthing folks through the whole period.
Thank you, Dr. Fernandez y Garcia. Your expertise, both of you, is super beneficial. This next question's kind of turning itself on its head. So if you were a first-time, soon-to-be Black parent, what questions would you possibly ask your providers that you were looking to align with your care, your infant, and then your family's care?
That's a great question. I think the role of this and providing all of this information is really the empowerment of individuals so that they are experts in not only themselves and their own health, but also in the standard of care. So what we're providing here is what the standard of care is for any pregnant person after they deliver, and what they should expect in the first 3 months of their newborn's life. And so, if you are a birthing person who is about to give birth, I think it is a very reasonable, in light of what we've mentioned about historic and structural discrimination, to ask what type of education that the providers in the hospital that you are delivering, if it is a hospital, or in the birthing center, or in whatever center that you're delivering in, have the providers there, the people who work there, had any sort of formal education about this? And are they aware of this? And what sort of support is there for folks who have historically been minoritized? The fact of the matter is there actually has been some effort in the state of California to rectify some of this with formal education. And many hospitals have actually done some work around addressing what has historically been negative, has had the potential to be a negative interaction. So your birthing place should have some thought put into this.
Thank you, Dr. Godsich. Dr. Fernandez y Garcia, did you have anything to add to that one?
No, that was a great answer. I'll just say that when we were putting together the presentation, we took care to let people know what are the recommended, or what the recommendations would be when they deliver, because I think they're part of advocating for oneself is knowing what to expect. And I think that before people deliver, they don't have a good idea, and that's, the health system in general, the medical system in general's fault for not letting people know what's going to happen in that 24 to 48 hours that after you've delivered. And so there's a lot of preconceptions, misconceptions by everybody that leads to what could have been a beautiful experience turning into a negative and problematic one. So when we talked about some of the recommended interventions and screenings that will happen, and there are opportunities prior to delivery to discuss those with the providers who are going to be delivering, and as a pediatrician, with the pediatrician who will be seeing the babies after they're born, and talking about these different recommendations and what folks are comfortable with or not, and why, and doing that beforehand so that the 4th trimester goes as smoothly as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Counseling before, talking about what to expect, huge. And that is also your way of advocating to be, to say, I think I'm supposed to have an appointment within 3 weeks of delivery. I think my baby's supposed to have an appointment within 2 days of delivery. Where's that appointment? And it really is being able to say, I know those are the guidelines, right? And no one can question you for following the guidelines. And so really that is addressing some of those things that Eric named as a way of really changing outcomes, is really empowering people and having them hold knowledge. And Elise, I see your question about being Black as a risk factor for preeclampsia. Yeah, experiencing racism is a risk factor for preeclampsia. I mean, that is the formulation that we've used in research is really kind of creates a biological marker that is not there. It is not. And so Black folks who do not live in the United States do not have the same preeclampsia risks. It is the conditions of living in environments that are highly polluted, with few social support, with little social support, with poor access to certain resources, et cetera, that create the conditions for preeclampsia. And so, having your blood pressure measured at every single visit, being asked about headaches, have your urine checked for any signs of protein at every single visit is the screening for preeclampsia. And don't let anyone discredit your headache. You should, if you have a headache, you should say, I've taken Tylenol, it's not going away. The next step is check your blood pressure, get some blood work, and get your urine and screen for preeclampsia immediately.
So I'm going to take my life into my hands here and combine you and Dr. Fernandez y Garcia's last remarks and talk beyond preeclampsia at the issue of equity, racism, and the need and the permission, maybe even, to be your own health advocate. That is sometimes a very scary role to play. I was hoping you'd talk a little bit more about self-advocacy, community advocacy, and how stress is an additional factor in all of these health outcomes, and lack of socio and economic support plays into that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very appropriate direction to go with this. So, to the first point about being your own advocate and how that can be scary. This is why I want you all to have the tools to say, the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology recommends this. The American Academy of Pediatrics, like, use the words to be able to say, I have the lingo. right? Don't try and intimidate me. Like I know what's up, and this is what's supposed to happen, and it's not happening. So let's make sure we're on the same page here. And this is actually where your doula could be huge in being an advocate, and there's going to be space when I stop talking to talk more about how having a care support team, including a doula who can really find the words when perhaps you're experiencing distress or intimidation or pain or fear, anxiety, to really have someone who can say, you know what, I think that this should be happening. Let's talk about what I think should be happening and what's happening and where the disconnect is, and let's get back on the same page, because we all want the same thing, which is a healthy delivery. Let's get back on the team page together. So really using your support, and Medi-Cal is going to cover doulas, which is amazing because there is tons of research that there are better outcomes when doulas are present during delivery, regardless of the circumstances. Hospital, birthing center, home, all of those things. So yeah, that's how I'd briefly answer that.
Dr. Fernandez-Garcia, do you have an opinion on that from the post-birth and pediatrics and school and developmental milestones perspective?
Yeah, that's a lot. I do have a lot of opinions on that. There a lot of what happens in this fourth trimester is set up prenatally and even before that. And so, for example, I'm sorry about the siren that you hear in the background if you hear that, but
we asked you to be here because you were a doctor. We won't punish you for providing care.
So there are, I think it's illustrative to know that there are parents who interview pediatric providers or child providers during their pregnancy, right? That's a type of advocacy that I think our communities don't do. And it's just an example of how other communities have no problem pushing for things. And I think that's one thing when I'm speaking with folks about advocating for themselves, that it's happening, other people are doing it, and we just have to do it as well, right? And so when we are talking about, I think sometimes parents have a hard time, or they feel like they don't have the right to push for certain things or the right to question, and that's very cultural for some of us, and ingrained for some of us. And so I think starting in pregnancy with that idea of knowing what's coming in that fourth trimester and starting to prepare for that and asking about that and making those plans, that's all part of that continuum of advocating, and you can start early. And so I think that that is my major push and my biggest advice when I talk to parents, when I see a child in clinic and the parent tells me that they're pregnant again, I'm already talking to them about that new baby and what's going to happen in the hospital and what we're going to do right after that. So start early and know that other people are doing it, and we should do it too.
Thank you. I'm going to give you guys two what I would call softball questions, and then I'm going to ask you kind of a hard one in prep for our next session. So the first softball question, it's not a softball question, but it's easy for you to answer. Talk to me very, very high level about what medications or medications that are safe to take during pregnancy, or are there any safe medications to take during pregnancy?
Great question. Easy, simple. Tylenol, Benadryl. Nasal spray for allergies because we're in Sacramento. Anything else, talk to your provider. Benadryl has been used for decades and decades and decades. Very helpful for congestion, actually, and very helpful for sleep. and not contraindicated. Take 2 Benadryl over the counter or whatever equivalent, totally fine. Diphenhydramine is the generic name. Tylenol, safe. A gram. You can take a gram up to 3 times a day, totally safe in pregnancy based on the data that we have, and it's been used for years, for decades. So those are the 2 ones. Nasal allergy sprays with steroids in them, safe, not getting into your baby's system, not of concern. Anything else, check in with your doc. There are some other safe ones, but it's worthwhile having a conversation about you specifically. So that's my quick answer.
Thank you. I appreciate the succinctness. The next one we'll ask Dr. Fernandez y Garcia to answer first. When dealing with a newborn, what are the 2 diet and nutrition changes a new mother should make first?
Yeah, so we are proponents of breastfeeding, exclusive breastfeeding, and that is then a birthing person making food for another person. So nutrition is one of the things that we focus on as the pediatric providers, and making sure that people who are breastfeeding are eating enough. And I think that's hard sometimes right after birth. Everybody's tired, everybody's not sleeping, and dealing with the child and forgetting to eat. So rather than talk about specific things to avoid or take, I would say eating enough, drinking enough fluids, taking your vitamins, continuing to take your vitamins, and just knowing that you're doing that now. You were doing it for 2 folks before as you were growing a baby, and now you're making food for a baby, so it continues.
Thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. I know that while I characterize those as softball questions, they're very, very important during this process in life, and something that people dedicate a lot of reading time and mental angst to. So your global good advice is very helpful. The last question I'm going to ask is going to be more oriented to Dr. Godsich. Dr. Godsich, you've had a conversation in our planning sessions with Sabrina Beavers, who has shared her personal experience. She was hoping she might be able to give a very high overview of that without violating her own HIPAA. And you might be able to talk about how that experience could have been different. And then that will lead us into our intermission.
Absolutely. I'd be grateful for the opportunity. Yep. I'm not seeing.
Sabrina, are you able to? Great.
I'm here. Oh, I think I was muted. So my experience, because we're talking about the 4th trimester and what that looks like for new parents who have just given birth. Obviously, it's going to look slightly different for those who have the unfortunate experience of delivering preterm. Especially if you're having to deal with caring for yourself, as well as having concern in caring for a baby that is in the NICU. And the NICU is the neonatal intensive care unit. So it's just an intensive care treatment area for infants to give them direct care when it comes to certain concerns they may have being born less than full term. From my experience, I had delivered at 35 weeks. I had just had a prenatal appointment 2 days prior, talking with my doctor. We had talked about concerns. I let them know that my mucus plug had come out. My doctor did ask me if I had any contractions. Of course, hindsight is always 20/20. And realizing that I probably had the ability to push for being checked hooked up to a monitor to see whether or not I was in fact in labor. Because as a new as a person who's newly pregnant for the first time, Braxton Hicks can in some cases feel like actual contractions, especially if you have a very high pain tolerance. And for me, that was my unfortunate experience. So, so obviously it was a surprise when my water broke 2 days later on my last day of work before going on maternity leave. See, I had a plan. But obviously that plan was, kicked to the curb, and now I had to experience, remaining calm at the same time having concern about my baby, what complications could arise having my baby early. She did spend 10 days in the NICU. Fortunately, she didn't have any major complications. During that experience, I did have a complication from the epidural that I had. I got an intense headache the day of my discharge, and I talked to the anesthesiologist about it, and they had recommended a treatment that I didn't think was it didn't sound all that great, but but eventually, going back and forth to the hospital, the symptoms came back. I knew something was wrong. I went to the ER and had it taken care of, but it also took time away from me being able to spend time with my baby. Also, it delayed my ability to breastfeed because I wasn't able to latch her immediately. As a matter of fact, I didn't get a chance to latch her until the day she was being discharged, which I think that was a failure on their part, considering that I was a new mom and didn't know that I could advocate to work towards breastfeeding. So one of the things that I wanted to leave with those that are joining us on the webinar is that if for whatever reason, if you're dealing with patients who happen to have a preterm birth, um, being more intentional about when they come to you concerning symptoms, even if it doesn't sound concerning, just going that extra mile to check into what's going on with them, because that could have prevented a preterm birth, at least in my case. Also, I do remember having a back and forth conversation with my doctor when it came to FMLA, to have one of my birthing support persons to support me just in case I needed extra support, and they denied it. Considering that, because it would have been helpful to have that extra support. My mother had to take time off, her personal time off of work, in order for her to be there and to support me, because obviously it was a surprise. It wasn't something either of us was expecting. Yes, I was due soon, but I wasn't supposed to be due that soon. And then also making sure that, because I don't remember having any checkup with my provider, or even a recommendation for a checkup with my provider after delivering preterm. And it would have been important, to have that, just to make sure everything was going the way it was supposed to, making sure that my mental health was intact, because it's hard to be a first-time mom or a new parent, period, and having to leave the hospital no longer pregnant, but you don't have your baby. So even now, it still makes me emotional. My child is 3 now, but I mean, it changes the trajectory of your ability to bond with your baby, and being more intentional about the care that you provide for your patients can help to minimize help make the experience a lot better and less foreign for a parent who's going through it. So that was my experience, and I'm glad I was able and honored to share, so therefore it can kind of help the care that you provide to your patients.
I am so grateful that you shared all of that. Thank you so very much, and for naming all of the ways in which things could have been better. I'm very, very grateful to you, Ms. Beavers, and I'm sorry that that was the experience that you had, and I'm sorry that you were not heard with your concerns. And perhaps I can go back and answer that question again, Elise. What things should you plan for when you are pregnant? or what things should you look for? The opportunity to trust your provider and to know that your provider will hear you when you have concerns, no matter how small they are. Because what you think is just a little rash on your stomach and you're like, it's not a big deal. If your provider is listening close enough, they will recognize that as a serious condition called cholestasis of pregnancy that could lead to a stillbirth. So you want a provider who's going to hear you with every single thing, including that loss of the mucus plug. And a first-time mom saying, I'm having contractions. I think they're Braxton Hicks. Wait, let's talk about them. How often are they? When are you feeling them? Are they going away? Are they happening with movement? Let's talk about it. Let's get into it, because I prefer to send people to labor and delivery for evaluation 3 times without them being in labor than to miss the time that they're actually in labor. Right. And so I also, I love being a family doctor, and that is because I get to see parents and babies together and make sure both are okay, even if it's a visit for one or the other. And having that longitudinal relationship with my patients is such a privilege. And I owe everything to my patients who give me that trust to make sure that they are safe. That is my responsibility. So get you a doctor who feels like that and who hears you, and make sure that you're safe. And thank you again, Ms. Beavers, for sharing that experience. I'm sorry that happened.
It was my pleasure. I just want to make sure that my experience can help someone else.
Thank you.
Wonderful. I want to thank you all so much for being such amazing presenters. We know that it's difficult being able to share your own testimony. And Sabrina, we really appreciate the importance of you sharing advocacy and really being clear with what your intentions are when unforeseen circumstances happen during labor. So with this time, I would like to introduce Tia Hairston, who is going to be leading our intermission activity. This will be an opportunity for us to take a 5-minute break to get out of our chairs, learn some new holistic health practices that can help us. And for those of you that do need to step away from your computer, we kindly ask that you rejoin us in 5 minutes. But without further ado, I would like to pass this over to Tia Hairston.
Good evening. Good evening. Thank you all so much for this space. I have 3 children, but I'm learning so much just listening to all of you. So I'm so just honored to be here sharing space with you all. As Monica said, my name is Dr. Tia Hairston. I am actually a PhD of sociology. My passion is in the sociology of health, racial disparities, Black maternal health and infant disparities. And I have another passion with fitness. So fitness is my jam. I love exercise. I love just everything that has to do with moving my body and being able to breathe. And so that's what I'm going to share with you all today, just a little bit of movement and breath work. So if you have an opportunity to get up out of your chair, that would be great. So just very briefly, movement and breathing, especially during pregnancy, can be super beneficial to mom and baby. Deep breathing in particular improves circulation of the blood. It improves your oxygen that's supplied to you and your baby. It helps to remove waste more effectively. It relaxes you. It improves stress, or should I say reduces stress. And then exercise in general, as long as you're healthy and your physician approves or kind of gives you the okay to work out, would probably get about 20 to 30 minutes a day. That could be dancing, that could be cleaning, walking in the grocery store. But all of these things are very helpful to, managing stress, sleeping better, managing some of those discomforts that we all get during pregnancy. Excuse me. Also helps to reduce risk of pregnancy complications. It can help with birth. And so I'm a huge proponent of deep breathing and exercise. So I'm just going to walk us through a couple of basic movements, about 2 minutes, that you can do anywhere just to loosen up, to relax, to calm down. I know birth and pregnancy and having other children, all of those things can be stressful, can be overwhelming. So I'm just going to take us through a little soft stretch that we can all do anytime, anywhere, whether the kids are there or not. Get them involved if you have to. So if you have some space and if you're feeling well enough to get up and move, please join us. So I'm going to change my background because I'm afraid you may not be able to see me with this virtual background, and then we'll get started. You see all my fitness equipment in the background. So, all right, so I'm gonna stand up and please let me know if you cannot see me well enough. Again, this is just like a 2-minute stretch just to get your body moving. Your body wants to move. Yeah, I see Dr. Mika over there stretching already. Yes, let's do it. Can everybody hear me okay? Thumbs up, perfect. All right. My back far enough? All right, so I'm gonna ask you to just ground yourself. Feet planted flat on the ground. I'm going to invite you to just put your hand on your heart. Maybe a hand on your belly for our pregnant folks joining us. And take a few deep breaths. In through the nose and out through the mouth. In through the nose, out through the mouth. One more, in through the nose. Really filling up that chest cavity and exhaling out through the mouth. So I'm going to invite you to do 5 of each of these moves. So the first move we're going to do is a shoulder roll backward, okay? So we're going to do 5 backward shoulder rolls on 3. 1, 2, 3. And as you're rolling those shoulders, really be in touch with your breath. Still deep breathing and paying attention to your body. Let's reverse that going forward, 5 forward. Paying attention to the way your body feels as you move. 1 more forward. Let's do some arm circles. 5 to the front and 5 to the back. Ready? Paying attention to that breath. And we're going to go backwards, 5 to the back. Awesome. All right. Now I'm going to invite you to put your hands on your hips, spreading those legs out to about shoulder width. And we're going to roll those hips. All right. So we're going to roll it to the left. 5 rolls. Still breathing. And then we're going to reverse it to the right. Ready? Really feeling your body. How does it feel? Notice any discomfort. Okay. So I'm next going to invite you to do a few squats. Again, if this is not feeling good, don't do it. If it feels good to you, let's move. So with the squat, you're also going to have your legs about shoulder width apart. You can spread it out a little more if it feels more comfortable. And you will bend at the knee, keeping your back straight, chest out, and just slowly taking yourself down. We're going to do 5 of these. You can also put your hands down the middle if that feels more comfortable, or out to the side if it helps you with your balance. Let's do 2 more. And last one. Still paying attention to that breath. Never forget that breath. All right, so the next exercise, we are going to lift one of our arms and let your body fall to the side. This should really feel good on the belly if you are carrying right now. Breathing in as you come up and reversing that stretch to the other side. Breathing in as you come up, exhaling on your way down. And we're going to reverse 3 more times. Always focusing on that breath, but also focusing on the way your body feels. If your body does not feel good, do not do it. Last one to the left and last one to the right. In the last stretch we're going to do, we are going to bring ourselves all the way up, stretching all the way up to the sky, and then letting ourselves come back down into that squat. Again, lifting yourself all the way up on those tippy toes if you can, and letting yourself come back down into that squat. 3 more here. Inhaling on the way up, exhaling on the way down. Inhaling on the way up, exhaling on the way down. Last one, inhale on the way up and exhale on the way down. Yes, I love that y'all are moving. Yes, how do we feel? Good, awesome, perfect, perfect, perfect. So again, that's just something you can do really briefly wherever you are at any time. If you just need to take a breath, if you need to get a stretch, that's something you can do that's pretty simple. Depending on where you are in your pregnancy, it might not be as simple, but it's still super helpful. Thank you so much for allowing me to do that.
Thank you so
Dr.
much.
Hairston. Yes, thank you. That was beautiful. You know, most folks who know me know that typically this is the workout time. So now I feel like I didn't miss a workout at all. That was really beautiful. Thank you for getting us moving and breathing. Connecting with our breath is so important.
Indeed, that was just wonderful. I feel like I'm out of breath, but in a good way. So perfect opportunity to move into the next session for tonight. So we want to now let Shelley have a moment to talk about some of the resources also offered through UC Davis Health. And so I will turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Monica. Okay, so we have partners at UC Davis Health, and this is a program that we really wanted to be sure to share with everyone. And there aren't any specific eligibility requirements or any proof that you need to provide. I'll drop into the chat the instructions for how to access this program, but a 1-hour class is required, and then a pickup at the broad location of UC Davis. So we really want to share this resource with you all and to be sure that this resource gets shared widely. Really great opportunity to connect people to car seat programs. And I'm hearing my internet's a bit fuzzy, Monica. If you need to repeat anything that cut out, if you don't mind just repeating that. Uh-oh, hello?
Yes, we are here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I see my internet was a bit fuzzy. If you want to repeat anything that wasn't clear, please do.
Absolutely. So thank you so much, Shelley. So this program offered by UC Davis Health is an opportunity for you to contact them directly to be able to register for this 1 hour virtual opportunity. As a way of completing this, it's a great way to also learn how to install, and you will be receiving a complimentary car seat as a result. So we do have information that I will, insert in the chat for additional information, and we'll also be emailing this information to our participants today. So I would now like to take us into the second half of today's webinar. We are going to move into our community partner question and answer session, and do want our audience to know that while we can't provide specific medical advice or personalized direction, we do invite you to ask our health professionals and community partners any questions. And so before we begin, I would like to allow our panelists an opportunity to introduce themselves. And I will now turn this over to our panelists.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Victoria Coulter, and I work with Sacramento Children's Home as a neighborhood navigator that provides advocacy for our African-American families to get some more acquainted with our services and the services of our partners. Our organization focuses on family empowerment through family bonding. Through parent bonding, just to make sure that everybody is acquainted with themselves and more cohesive as a unit. This includes one-on-one services, intervention services, workshops, classes, and also skills development workshops.
Hi, my name is Salah Oyael. I am a community doula. I am a mother of 7. And my passion is supporting women, specifically women that have children, because I want to not only help the mother, but also help the partners and also the children. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sabrina Beavers again. I am the program lead for our local program here called Black Infant Health in Fresno County. It's a statewide program throughout the state of California, as far north as San Francisco and all the way down to San Diego. We're focused in areas where we have 90% of our Black births, so most of our urban metropolitan cities. And like I said, I'm the lead here in Fresno County for the program. Our program provides one-on-one case management as well as social support for moms through the form of a social support group. We help them navigate through their pregnancy, postpartum, their pregnancy, birth, and postpartum experience by connecting them to resources and making sure that we're helping to reduce stress, reduce isolation, and increase social support.
And again, I'm Dr. Tia Hairston. I am the founder of Be Love Holistic, which is a philanthropic organization that offers holistic health and wellness services for Black women to equip them with information and education and resources that are really intended to improve and optimize our mental health, our emotional, spiritual, and physical well-being. I'm also a mother of 3. I'm a community caregiver, sociologist, as I said before, a holistic health coach and nutritionist. I've held many sister circles that cover a multitude of things, but one of my passions is facilitating grief and loss groups for Black women who have experienced pregnancy loss, early infant death, and infertility. Again, I'm a self-trained fitness enthusiast and former fitness instructor. And so I really emphasize the benefits, the therapeutic value of exercise and physical fitness in general, but especially for Black women, especially those who have lost children in any sense. Just the therapeutic value that it has added to my life. I'd like to share that with other people. So that's the short version of who I am in the space today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone, for those introductions. You know, I have to say you all have such a wide background and versatility to the unique skill sets you bring to maternal health. And so I would like to start off with our first question, and feel free just to raise your hand if you'd like to answer this first. If you could design your own clinical setting in what you do with your day-to-day activities serving clients in the community, what is one thing that you would add into that space? Okay, I see Victoria has her hand raised. I'll let you start.
There we go. Did it work? Okay, perfect. Sorry about that. I think I would provide like-minded staff. It's important to have a staff serving the community that looks like us. It's hard enough for our community to ask for help, but it's a lot easier when we have someone that looks like them and that goes through the same experience that we have. A lot of times when we go to a doctor that doesn't actually understand our personal experience, it can be quite contradicting on what we want to say and what their answer is just because they don't understand us. So I would love to have an all African-American staff if I did have my own clinic.
Thank you, Victoria. Representation goes a long way, and I appreciate that. Selah, I see that you also wanted to add to this as well.
You know, this may sound funny, but I would actually have a wing designed for melanated male doulas. The reason why I say that is because I have 7 children, and my husband was my greatest support. I think I made him a professional, actually. And I'm just seeing more brothers getting into this space, and I think that it will change the dynamics of the relationship between the parent, the birthing woman, and also their partner. I think that it would change the dynamics of the healing part and the nurturing part, and even just how to be nurturing as a man. I think that it would change the scope of just the family in itself. I think it's like so important. Another area that I would actually have is, I'm going to talk about the frontline doulas. The frontline doulas I am a part of. That is an organization that is helping women in their 4th trimester. But specifically, it was made for our people, Black people, melanated people, more people, to have a resource or a listening ear or a second opinion or a grounding or just to deal with whether they're pregnant or thereafter. I think that to speak to a woman that just gave birth and hear that there's somebody else on the next line, like, hey sister, how you doing? Like, really, how are you doing? How can I be of service to you? What kind of services do you need, as far as, like, you know, whether it be looking for a baby yoga class, or whether it be like, oh, do you know of a program that gives free diapers, or like, it just helps. Yeah, we just help on such a major level when it comes to the 4th trimester. But we are frontline doulas, and we don't call it a hotline, we call it a warm line, because we are there to support, give you information, and sometimes we become their doulas. So it is deep, and even their postpartum. So thank you.
I would add 3 things. Obviously, a fitness studio, a garden. Getting your hands in the dirt is really therapeutic. And then also a sound bowl healing room. I don't know how many of you have ever experienced sound bowl healing or sound baths, but it's a very transcendental experience. So those are the 3 things that I would have to have in my clinical setting.
Thank you all so much. This is a lot of amazing insight and just so many unique resources that really help when it comes to family planning. And so I appreciate that. We do have another question from one of our audience members that I wanted to ask our panelists today. And they're asking, how can we as perinatal healthcare workers support parents who have lost an infant suddenly? So for an example, SIDS or suffocation or co-sleeping. What are some of the generic grief support groups and materials that are here in Sacramento County to address the needs of Black families?
That is one thing that I think we lack, not just in Sacramento, but just in general. I think there is unfortunately, a gap in those kinds of services, or even the thoughts of having those types of services. Generically, I think, and I wouldn't even say generically, that was kind of a term you used, Monica, but not so much generically. I think we need care teams. I think we need, just like Selah was just expressing, we need someone to be on the phone. Sister, how you feeling? Brother, how you feeling? We need people to come to their houses and get them out of the house, because a lot of times it is very depressing. I lost a child at 5 months, and I didn't want to leave my house. I didn't want to get out of my bed. And luckily I had some support, but not enough, right? And nothing may feel like enough support when you lose a child. But to have a care team, somebody checking in, somebody getting you out of the house, taking you on a nature walk, someone plugging with mental health services, because those are unbelievably hard to acquire. So those are just some of the things that come to mind. For me, sister circles are very healing and therapeutic, and it's an extended kind of wraparound service. It's an extended system of care to just have a group of women to pour into you and to just be there to listen or to be a shoulder to cry on. So those are some of the things that off the top of my head that I would definitely advocate for.
May I add? I think that it's so important. One of my the sister that got me involved in birth work, she shared with me. She said, "You know, your experience makes you an expert," and I never thought about that. And so, although I have 7 children, I had 10 children, and so losing a baby while already being I'm dealing with postpartum. And so I think that, like for me in my practice, I try to help women that has lost babies because that's my experience. And so I think, just finding the right person to deal with, the right doula to deal with that has some kind of experience can actually give you certain measures for you to help you in your healing process. Like the sister said, whether you all are spending time or taking a walk together. Like I'm dealing with this young sister in Fresno. I'm in Merced, California. In Fresno, she had a baby, so she's already dealing with postpartum, and she loses the baby. And so while we were speaking, she didn't want to speak over the phone. We met, and so while meeting, she was like, she hasn't cried. She hasn't cried, and she feels like she got to be strong for the rest of the children. And I'm like, okay, so this is a measure. Sister, if you can write a note to your baby that passed, feel it, discuss it with your partner, allow yourself to feel, And so I think that, having measures and having a doula, having a support of a doula is life-changing. And I say that because my last pregnancy, I had 4 doulas, and I'm like, yo, I've never experienced the amount. And I think it's because of the sisterhood, you know what I mean? That sister circle. And so, yeah, that's just what I wanted to add.
I wanted to add, because I noticed with the question, you were saying that some of the local generic resources just weren't, filling the gap. Um, One of the things that, and to piggyback off of what Selah and Dr. Hairston said, was making sure that you're referring them to resources that already exist. Some of us work for some of those resources, like Black Infant Health, Black Child Legacy Campaign. Being intentional about looking for those types of resources, even if it is just referring them to a mental health professional that looks like them. Because I know that in that space, it can be difficult, especially because here in Fresno, we do have a perinatal wellness program that focuses on perinatal mood disorders and also addresses grief when you're dealing with a loss, whether it's a loss during pregnancy or a loss during after birth, and or even during birth, and making sure that the representation of therapists that are at the practice are, can identify with the client. They look like them. In some cases, they've had the same experience. So it kind of takes a little bit of digging. And then of course, making sure that you're just providing that extra personal care until they get connected. Don't just tell them about the resource and then don't follow up. Making sure that you're following them through the entire, until they get handed off warmly to the next resource, and then continuing to follow up with them if you have the ability to do so, to make sure that because it can be difficult, in that space, wanting to seek help but don't know how. And making sure that you connect the woman fully to the resource and follow up with her consistently if you can. So therefore she stays connected with the resource.
Yeah, it seems as though, as Dr. Tia talked about, there is a lack of resources within that factor in a lot of situations where parents have experienced loss, and there's no timeline on grief. If it's 3 years, 4 years down the road, and you're still feeling those effects of postpartum, the level of advocacy is going to be slim to none, just because getting into those certain collaboratives that allow you to relinquish that pain and that grief. It's kind of hard when the collaboratives come back and say, well, it's 3 years since the loss, we don't really do anything. And advocating for them and those certain experiences and letting them in and letting them travel through that grief so that way they can push it away would be very helpful.
And if I may, Dr. Eric you wrote in the chat that doctors are not trained. Supporting a person who has lost a child in pregnancy is not something that physicians are trained in. It's something we learn to do once we go through it. And so my question is, how do we make this something that doctors are trained in, right? Or if you're not trained in it, how do we create these systems of care or these care teams that the doctors who may not be trained in these crises, but can what's the word I'm looking for? Recommend or suggest, or, how can we get this to be a part of the healthcare system? Because we know it happens. It happens all the time. Yeah. That was one of the reasons that I created Be Love Holistic, was because I didn't have that level of care. My doctors didn't know what to do. They sent me to a group therapy. Mm-hmm. And that's not what I needed. And so, how do we make this something that our physicians or our care teams do have experience in, or are able to recommend to us when we have these experiences?
I want to name what Eric put in the chat that I think is really important. These interactions that we have in this space with shared community between different types of providers are how we move towards doing better, and naming that we're not there yet and we have so much to learn. And I really appreciate this opportunity. And there is expertise in palliative care and managing grief and this specific thinking about specifically the Black population is something where we can all do better and think about. And so I really appreciate the naming of this in this space and creating an opportunity for us to think about how to continue to partner.
Yeah, it's how do you move a medical culture, right? Because this is our culture of medicine that doesn't acknowledge that need. And so whenever we have something that's important that we need to change, it takes people like Dr. Gotsich or me who are hearing these things to start changing curriculum here at UC Davis. And then that's successful. And then you spread it to the other health systems in Sacramento, and then you spread it to San Francisco. So this is how things change. Having people involved in opportunities like this to hear, what's necessary, and then holding us accountable to then do what we're supposed to do and try to make changes in how people are trained. So I put that comment there because it's true that we went through it with my partner, with my wife, and had a horrible experience, and we were physicians, and it's just, I don't think it's something that we do at all, and if we do it, we don't do it well. And so in my involvement, I have a long partnership with Her Health First and Black Mothers United, and so I personally know about the teams and resources, and I have friends who run doula groups, and so I'm involved personally in all of these things. But what I need to do better, and what I'll tell everybody on this, what I will do better is trying to make sure that everybody that I talk to and the influence that I have understands that there's a community that we need to be working with to make sure that people get the care that they need.
Yeah, and I'll just piggyback on that, Eric. Thank you so much for sharing that personal experience and your relationship to this topic. I know that both Eric and I work at UC Davis because we are passionate about ensuring that doctors going forward do better. There's so much room to do better. And we are so fortunate at UC Davis to be working with an incredibly diverse group of medical students, the number of Black students and first gen folks, of people who are like changing the narrative about what it's like to be a doctor, who gets to be a doctor and who looks like a doctor, is amazing. And so when we have these opportunities and interactions, we can also bring that back to the next generation of physicians and hopefully create more spaces like this going forward. So thank you.
This was just so informative again, and I want to thank everyone for their time. I see that we still have our audience with us, and just wanted to use this opportunity to ask one final question. And please, anyone who's been presenting with us today, feel free to answer, as we just want to continue to hear more voices and provide services and support to the community at large. So one of our final questions I wanted to ask is, just as a whole, with all the information we've learned today, it sounds like there is a holistic approach to really how we navigate that fourth trimester. Is there anything our speakers today would like to share that we missed, or as a way for our audience to take on these next steps?
One thing I would encourage is to ask questions. Never be afraid to ask questions. I know a lot of us have reservations about that. We don't want to sound stupid, or we don't, want to seem like this is something I should already know. So I don't want to ask questions. There's nothing wrong with it. This is for you and for your baby or your children. And there's nothing that you won't do for them, right? So ask questions, listen to your body, listen to your intuition. If something doesn't seem right, it might not be right. And that's where you got to ask the question so that you can either get some help or some reassurance. But definitely listening to your body is very important. If you haven't been, start. Those are the two things off the top of my head. If I have something else and we have more time, I'll jump in. But those are definitely two things that have helped me through my pregnancies and even afterwards. It's something that I really stand by.
From my experience, making sure that you do your own personal research, whether it's more of a holistic approach or more of a medical, but look into both arenas, having an open mind, utilizing the information when you're talking to your medical providers or any care provider that's providing care. Not being afraid to advocate for yourself. And if you get pushback, know that you have the ability to go to someone else. Don't always feel like you have to be stuck with who you're getting care from, because if you don't have confidence in this person, when it comes to your birthing experience, you're not going to have confidence in that experience. You want to make sure that the person who's you're going to be giving birth with and collaborating on your birth with, that you can trust them. And if you can't trust them, then your birthing experience is not going to be the way that you would want it to be. So always consider that, yeah, I might be 35 weeks and I've dealt with this long, but it's time for me to go. Don't think that you're stuck with that person. There is someone that is willing to provide you with compassionate care and support you on the decisions that you're trying to make for your birth. So don't ever feel like you're stuck with a care provider. Find someone else.
Thank you for that, Sabrina. And with this time, I wanted to pass this over to Shelly Dyer to really be able to share a little more about how our audience can continue to stay engaged. I know that we actually have another question in the chat, and I think some of this will be included in this final portion of today, but really just how to navigate resources and where exactly some of our audience members today can actually locate Black doulas in Sacramento. So Shelly, would you be so kind to share with the audience on how they're able to navigate additional resources?
Thank you, Monica. I'm happy to do that, but first I just have to say thank you to all of you for contributing. Just with the agenda that we had put together, just would not have imagined all of the personal stories you all have shared that are really moving of joy, but also of loss, and just want to really honor you all for sharing your stories and connecting over your stories. I'll just echo Dr. Fernandez y Garcia, and this is how systems change happens when we have these conversations across sectors, building partnerships between doulas and our physicians and our wellness advocates. So I'm just so grateful that we've been able to have this space today, and look forward to staying in touch with all of you. We have a slide up that's sharing navigating resources. These are all of our websites where you can reach us at the center with the Black Child Legacy Campaign, as well as our social media handles. We will be sharing this presentation out with all of you, and we just definitely invite you to visit the websites and stay in touch with us.
Fantastic. And this webinar today was also live streamed on Facebook. So another opportunity for folks that aren't physically here to be able to go back and rewatch. So again, if we can have everyone remember to sign in with the chat link and we can follow up with you with additional resources. We do invite all of you to come back, as we will be doing a second session on the 28th at the same time, to really dive deeper into Black maternal mental health and really kind of use that opportunity to kind of elaborate on today's conversation on a larger scale. So if there are no further questions, we want to thank our audience so much for joining us tonight in honor of this being Black Maternal Health Week, and hope that you enjoyed tonight's program. Thank you so much for everyone for joining us.